Stop drinking water the way you've been doing it your entire life, because if you're over 60 and you keep waking up 2, 3, or even 4 times every single night just to rush to the bathroom, the real problem is almost never the amount of water you drink. It's something far more subtle. It's when you drink it, how you drink it, and how your aging body processes it in the background while you sleep. And what makes this even more important is that almost no one has ever clearly explained this to you in a way that actually makes sense for your body today. Not your doctor in a rushed appointment, not the general advice on bottles or health websites, and not even the habits you followed for years until now. I'm Dr. William Lee, and over the years, working in urology and vascular health, I've seen the same pattern repeat itself again and again. Intelligent, active, older adults slowly losing their sleep night after night, not because of disease, not because of medication side effects, but because of something surprisingly fixable that has been completely overlooked. The frustrating part is that most of these people don't need complicated treatment. They don't need surgery. And in many cases, they don't even need medication. What they need is a clear understanding that their body handles water very differently after the age of 60 compared to when they were in their 30s or 40s. The system changes in ways most people are never told about. In fact, there are at least 6 key shifts in how hydration works in later life, and once you understand them, your nights can start to change in a very real way. A major study from Leiden University Medical Center brought this into sharper focus. Researchers followed more than 18,000 adults aged 60 and above, and what they discovered was striking. Around 72% of them were waking up at least twice every night to urinate, a condition doctors call Nocturia. But the deeper issue wasn't just inconvenience. These individuals showed a 47% higher risk of falls, a 38% increase in depressive symptoms, and they were losing an average of 1.5 hours of deep sleep every single night. That isn't a minor lifestyle issue. That is a slow, ongoing decline in physical stability, mental health, and energy that most people don't even realize is happening until it becomes severe. Before we go into these 6 principles, I want you to reflect on something. How old are you right now? And how many times are you waking up at night? This simple awareness already tells a lot about what's happening in your system. Many people never connect their sleep issues to hydration habits, but by the end of this, you will see just how closely they are linked. We are going to move step by step, starting from number 6 and working all the way down to number 1. And as we go through them, you'll begin to notice something important. The way you drink water has a far greater impact on your sleep than almost anyone realizes. In fact, one of the habits we'll discuss later is something many healthy seniors do every morning, thinking it supports their body, when in reality, it may actually be contributing to the very nighttime waking they are trying to avoid. So let's begin with number 6. Number 6 is what I call front-loading failure, and it is one of the most common hidden reasons behind broken sleep in older adults. Most people don't notice it because it doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels normal. You wake up in the morning and drink very little water. The day moves on, and without realizing it, you remain slightly dehydrated. Then, in the evening, usually around dinner or after it, you try to catch up by drinking a larger amount of fluids all at once. This pattern seems harmless, but inside the body, it creates a very predictable chain reaction. As we age, kidney function naturally changes. After about 65, kidney filtration efficiency can drop significantly, sometimes by 30 to 40%. This means the system that once processed fluids quickly and smoothly is now working at a slower, more limited pace. You can think of it like a highway that used to have multiple open lanes, but now only has a few functioning ones. When you suddenly send a large volume of water into that system in the evening, your body cannot process it immediately. Instead, it holds on to the excess, and later in the night, when everything slows down, it finally catches up. That's when your bladder signals wakefulness, often around midnight or early morning. This is where many people begin their cycle of interrupted sleep without ever realizing the cause is in their daytime hydration pattern. The solution to this pattern begins with a simple but powerful shift in timing. Instead of loading your body with most of your hydration in the evening, you move it earlier in the day when your system is naturally more capable of handling it. Around 60 to 70% of your total daily fluid intake should ideally happen before 2 p.m. This is not a random suggestion, but a pattern supported by clinical observation and research on older adults' kidney performance and fluid regulation. A study from the University of Copenhagen found that seniors who adjusted their hydration timing in this way reduced nighttime bathroom trips by approximately 43% within just 3 weeks. That is a significant change, especially when you consider that no medication or invasive treatment was involved, only timing. The reason this works is because your kidneys, even when they are aging, still follow predictable rhythms. During the daytime, blood circulation is stronger, physical activity is higher, and filtration processes are more stable. Your body is essentially in processing mode. But as evening approaches, everything begins to slow down. If you delay hydration until this slower phase, your system is forced to handle a workload it is no longer optimized for. There is a real-world example that illustrates this clearly. A patient of mine, a 1-year-old retired teacher named Margaret from Pennsylvania, came to me after nearly 2 years of struggling with 4 nightly awakenings. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, and beginning to fear sleep itself because she knew she would be interrupted again and again. We didn't start with medication. We didn't change her diet dramatically. We made one adjustment only. We moved the majority of her water intake to earlier in the day. Within 3 weeks, her nighttime trips dropped from 4 to 1. After 6 weeks, there were nights where she didn't wake up at all. The improvement wasn't gradual in a vague sense. It was clear, measurable, and life-changing for her. She told me she finally felt like herself again after years of fragmented sleep. This is the power of timing when it comes to hydration. Another helpful adjustment during this phase is the use of lighter, earlier day hydration sources. For example, certain herbal teas consumed in the morning or early afternoon can support hydration without overwhelming the system in the same way large volumes of plain water sometimes do. The key is that they are introduced when your kidneys are still in their most efficient state, not when your body is preparing for rest. Now, moving forward, we reach something even more misunderstood, something that many people believe is actually beneficial for sleep, but often has the opposite effect in older adults. Number 5 is where we challenge one of the most common habits in nighttime hydration routines, drinking a full glass of water right before bed. On the surface, this advice sounds logical. You may have heard it many times. Stay hydrated before sleep. Prevent dehydration overnight. Support heart health or reduce risks linked to thickened blood during rest. In specific medical situations, hydration timing does matter. But for most healthy adults over 65, this habit creates a very predictable problem. It increases the likelihood of waking up in the middle of the night. To understand why, we need to look at what happens inside the body when you lie down. During the day, gravity pulls fluid downward, often causing mild pooling in the lower legs and ankles. Many older adults notice this as slight swelling by evening, but when you lie flat to sleep, that fluid begins to redistribute upward through the circulatory system. It returns towards central circulation and eventually reaches the kidneys. Research from Johns Hopkins has shown that in adults over 70, this shift can move up to 300 milliliters of fluid back into circulation within the first 90 minutes of lying down. That is already a significant internal adjustment happening while you are trying to fall asleep. Now, if you add a full glass of water right before bed, you are increasing that fluid load at the exact moment your body is entering its lowest metabolic state. Instead of settling into deep rest, your system is forced to process additional volume at night. The result is predictable. Around 1 to 2 hours into sleep, typically between 1 a.m. and 2 a.m., your kidneys finish processing that combined fluid load. Once that happens, your bladder sends a signal that wakes you up. This is not random interruption. It is a physiological response to timing. However, the solution is not to eliminate evening hydration completely. That would introduce a different issue, mild dehydration, which can affect blood pressure and circulation. The goal is balance, not restriction. Instead of a full glass before bed, the safer approach is to limit intake to very small amounts if needed. A few sips are often enough to relieve thirst without overwhelming the system. For many people, anything after 7 p.m. should be intentional rather than automatic. A simple practical adjustment is changing the size of what you keep near your bed. A small cup instead of a large bottle naturally limits overconsumption without requiring constant willpower. This environmental change often works better than trying to rely on discipline alone. And there is another important point that many overlook. Your body is already managing internal fluid redistribution while you sleep. Adding extra volume on top of that disrupts a balance that is already fragile in older age. This brings us to an even more overlooked factor, not just how much or when you drink, but what is actually in your water and how it influences bladder behavior over time. That brings us directly into something most people never think about at all, what is actually in the drinks you consume in the evening and how those healthy choices may be quietly training your bladder to wake you up at night. Number 4 is what I call the mineral gap that increases bladder sensitivity, and it is one of the most overlooked issues in senior hydration. It doesn't come from drinking too much water. It comes from drinking water that is missing something your body now depends on more than ever. One of the key players here is magnesium. As we age, magnesium levels naturally tend to decline. This happens for several reasons: reduced dietary intake, lower absorption efficiency in the gut, and sometimes the use of medications that affect mineral balance. According to research from the National Institutes of Health, up to 60 to 70% of older adults may not be getting adequate magnesium. At first, that may not sound directly related to sleep or urination, but it actually is. Magnesium plays a critical role in muscle relaxation and nerve signaling. That includes the muscle that controls the bladder, known as the detrusor muscle. When magnesium levels are low, this muscle can become more reactive than it should be. Instead of only contracting when the bladder is truly full, it may start sending urgency signals too early. The brain receives those signals and interprets them as a need to urinate, even when the bladder is not actually near capacity. In simple terms, the bladder becomes more sensitive than it should be. A clinical trial from the University of Bristol demonstrated this clearly. In women over 60 who received magnesium supplementation, nighttime urination episodes dropped by more than 50% in just a few weeks. That is a major improvement from a single mineral adjustment, showing how strongly this system responds to balance changes. Now, here is where hydration connects directly to this issue. Many modern water sources, especially heavily filtered or purified water, contain very low levels of natural minerals. That means even if you are drinking enough water, you may not be replenishing the electrolytes your body needs to regulate muscle and nerve function properly. Over time, this creates a subtle imbalance. On the surface, you are hydrated, but at the cellular and neurological level, your system is missing key elements that help stabilize bladder behavior. This is why some people experience urgency even when their fluid intake seems normal. One practical way to address this is to include mineral-rich water earlier in the day. Certain natural mineral waters contain measurable amounts of magnesium and other electrolytes that support fluid balance more effectively than plain purified water alone. Another option, depending on medical suitability, is introducing a small magnesium supplement in the morning with food, which can improve absorption and reduce the likelihood of overstimulated bladder responses later in the day. The key idea is not complexity, it is balance. Hydration is not just about how much water enters the body. It is also about what that water carries with it and how it supports nerve and muscle function over time. When this balance improves, many people notice something subtle but important. The urgency to urinate becomes less reactive, especially during the night hours when the body should be at rest. Now, even if hydration, timing, and minerals are corrected, there is still another hidden factor that continues to affect sleep in many older adults. And surprisingly, it has nothing to do with how much water you drink at all. It has everything to do with what you choose to drink in the evening, often believing it is healthy. This is where number 3 becomes very important because it challenges some of the most common healthy evening drink habits. Number 3 is where things become more surprising because it involves beverages that many people specifically choose for health reasons without realizing they may be increasing bladder activity at night. Over the years, I have seen a consistent pattern in patients struggling with repeated nighttime urination. They are not careless. In fact, many are extremely disciplined about their health. They drink herbal teas in the evening. They replace soda with sparkling water. They use coconut water for electrolytes. They even infuse water with fruit, believing it is a cleaner, healthier alternative. The issue is not intention. The issue is sensitivity. As we age, the bladder lining gradually becomes thinner and more reactive. The protective mucosal layer that once helped buffer mild irritants becomes less robust. This means substances that were harmless earlier in life can start to trigger urgency signals later on. One of the most common culprits is citric acid. It is found naturally in citrus fruits and in anything infused with lemon, orange, or similar flavors. In younger adults, this rarely causes any noticeable issue. But in older adults, it can increase bladder sensitivity and create the false sensation that the bladder is fuller than it actually is. Carbonated beverages are another hidden factor. The bubbles in sparkling water create mild internal pressure changes in the bladder. While this effect is small, in a sensitive system, it can be enough to trigger urgency, especially during the night when the body is in a more delicate resting state. Certain herbal teas can also contribute, particularly those containing ingredients like hibiscus or high levels of vitamin C, both of which may act as mild irritants in sensitive individuals. I had a 4-year-old retired engineer named Robert from Arizona who experienced this clearly. He followed what he believed was an excellent evening routine. Every night, he drank green tea with lemon and a small amount of apple cider vinegar because he had read it supported digestion and metabolism. Despite this routine, he was waking up 3 times every night. He assumed it was just aging or developing bladder condition. But when we reviewed his habits closely, the issue was not disease, it was irritation. We removed all evening beverages except plain warm water for 2 weeks. No citrus, no carbonation, no complex herbal blends. The change was immediate. His nighttime awakenings dropped from 3 to 1 almost overnight. This does not mean those drinks are harmful. In general, it means timing and sensitivity matter more than most people realize. The same drink that supports health during the day can become disruptive at night when the bladder is more reactive and the body is preparing for deep rest. A simple guideline that often works well is this. After about 5 p.m., keep hydration as neutral as possible. Plain water is usually the safest option. If you want something warm, chamomile tea is one of the few herbal options that has shown calming effects on bladder activity. Research from Nagoya University in Japan found that chamomile extract can reduce bladder muscle activity, which may help reduce urgency in sensitive individuals. The principle here is not restriction, it is simplification. The fewer reactive compounds your bladder has to process in the evening, the more stable your sleep becomes. Now, once we understand what to avoid in the evening, the next question becomes even more important. What should hydration look like in the morning so that the body does not build up imbalance that carries into the night in the first place? That brings us directly into number 2. That naturally leads into a more important question. If evening habits can disturb sleep, then what you do in the morning may actually be shaping the entire pattern that follows you into the night. Number 2 is one of the most overlooked hydration mistakes because on the surface, it looks like a healthy habit. It begins the moment you wake up. Most health-conscious people over 60 have heard the same advice for years. Drink a large glass of water immediately after waking. It sounds reasonable. After all, you have gone 7, 8, sometimes even 9 hours without fluids, so your body must be dehydrated, and it seems logical to correct that quickly. So what happens? You drink a full glass, often cold, sometimes even more than one, right away But what almost nobody explains is how the body actually responds to that sudden input, especially as we age. When you consume a large amount of water very quickly in the morning, your system experiences a rapid shift in fluid balance. Blood becomes diluted faster than normal, and your kidneys respond by increasing urine output to restore equilibrium. This creates a strong early flushing effect shortly after waking. At first, this doesn't seem like a problem. In fact, it may feel like your body is clearing out waste efficiently, but the deeper issue is not that immediate response, it is what it triggers internally for the rest of the day. This sudden hydration spike influences a key hormonal system responsible for water regulation, particularly antidiuretic hormone, or ADH. This hormone controls how much water your kidneys retain or release throughout the day and night. When this system is repeatedly pushed into sudden activation early in the morning, it can disrupt its natural rhythm. Instead of maintaining a stable pattern of fluid retention during the day and suppression at night, the body begins to lose some of that coordination. Research from the University of Tokyo's Department of Nephrology has shown that older adults who drink water slowly in smaller amounts maintain more stable fluid regulation throughout the day compared to those who consume large volumes all at once in the morning. One of the key findings was that slower hydration patterns were associated with fewer nighttime urination episodes. This is important because it reveals something most people never connect. Morning hydration behavior can directly influence nighttime sleep quality. The solution is not to reduce hydration in the morning. That would create a different problem: dehydration, fatigue, and reduced circulation. The solution is to change the pattern entirely. Instead of one large glass, hydration should be spread out gently over time. Small sips over 20 to 30 minutes allow the body to absorb fluid more naturally without triggering a strong hormonal or renal response. You can keep a small glass nearby and drink gradually while you begin your morning routine. A second small intake about 30 minutes later continues hydration without overwhelming the system. This creates a smooth, steady flow rather than a sudden spike. Temperature also matters more than most people realize. Cold water can create a mild stress response in the digestive system, especially in older adults whose metabolic and gastric responses are slower. This can indirectly influence how fluid is processed and distributed. Warm or room temperature water is generally easier on the body. It supports more stable absorption and reduces unnecessary physiological stress during a time when your system is adjusting from rest to activity. When you combine slow hydration with moderate temperature, you are essentially guiding your body into a balanced fluid rhythm for the entire day. And that rhythm matters because whatever pattern you establish in the morning tends to carry forward into the evening and night. Now, once you understand how morning habits influence hydration balance, the final and most important principle brings everything together. It is not about what happens at one specific time of day, but how all hydration timing across the entire day interacts with your body's natural hormonal cycles. This is where number one becomes critical because it explains how a simple timing rule can significantly reduce or even eliminate nighttime waking in many older adults. Number one is the 2-hour hydration cutoff combined with strategic daytime loading. To understand this, you need to look at how your body naturally regulates urine production. This process is controlled by a hormone called arginine vasopressin, also known as antidiuretic hormone. Its job is to signal your kidneys to slow down urine production at night so that sleep is not interrupted. In younger adults, this system works efficiently. At night, ADH levels increase, urine production decreases, and sleep remains uninterrupted. But after the age of 60, this rhythm weakens. Research from the University of Amsterdam has shown that the nighttime suppression of urine production can decrease by more than 30% in older adults. This means the kidneys continue producing almost the same amount of urine at night as they do during the day. This condition is known as nocturnal polyuria, and it is one of the primary reasons older adults wake up repeatedly during sleep. The key insight is that this is not primarily a bladder issue. It is a timing and hormonal regulation issue. The most effective way to influence this system is through structured hydration timing. The simplest rule is this: stop meaningful fluid intake about 2 hours before bedtime. If you sleep at 10 p.m., your last significant drink should be around 8 p.m., and even then, only small sips if absolutely necessary. But here's the part most people miss entirely. This only works if hydration earlier in the day is properly structured. Between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m., your body is in its most efficient fluid processing state. Kidney function is stronger, circulation is active, and hormonal regulation is stable. This makes it the ideal window to consume a larger portion of your daily hydration. A study published in the journal Urology and Neurodynamics found that older adults who consumed approximately 40% of their daily fluids during this afternoon window, combined with a strict evening cutoff, reduced nighttime urination episodes by more than 60% within 1 month. That is not a minor improvement. That is a major change in sleep quality, achieved purely through timing adjustments. To further support the system, pairing afternoon hydration with potassium-rich foods such as bananas, cucumbers, or yogurt helps stabilize fluid distribution at the cellular level. Potassium works alongside sodium to regulate how water is stored and released in the body, reducing sudden shifts that can later affect nighttime urination. When all of this comes together, a clear pattern emerges. Nighttime waking is not random. It is not just aging. It is the result of daily hydration, timing, mineral balance, and behavioral patterns that can be corrected. And across many patients I have worked with, I have seen the same transformation repeatedly. People who once woke up 4 times a night gradually reduce it to once, and in many cases, not at all, simply by adjusting how and when they drink water. Not through restriction, but through alignment with how the body is actually designed to function at this stage of life. Sleep is not something that disappears permanently with age. It is something that often becomes fragmented due to small, unnoticed biological timing errors, and those errors can be corrected. When you look closely at everything we've covered so far, a clear pattern begins to form. It's not just about how much water you drink, but when you drink it, what it contains, and how your body responds differently after 60. And once you understand that, the next step becomes even more important because it reveals a habit many people trust without question, even though it quietly disrupts sleep in the background. Number 1, brings everything together. The 2-hour hydration cutoff combined with smarter distribution earlier in the day. But before we finalize that system, it's important to understand why this timing approach is so powerful on a biological level. Your body is controlled by internal rhythms that regulate fluid balance throughout the day and night. One of the most important systems involved is a hormone called arginine vasopressin, also known as antidiuretic hormone or ADH. Its job is simple but essential. It tells your kidneys when to hold on to water and when to release it as urine. In a younger body, this system is highly synchronized. During the night, ADH levels rise, urine production slows down, and sleep continues uninterrupted. But after the age of 60, this rhythm becomes less reliable. Research from the University of Amsterdam shows that the nighttime suppression of urine production can decrease by more than 30% in older adults. What this means in practical terms is that your kidneys are no longer fully switching into night mode. They continue producing urine at a level much closer to daytime activity. This condition is known as nocturnal polyuria, and it is one of the leading causes of repeated nighttime awakenings. This is why many older adults assume the problem is a weak bladder, when in reality, the deeper issue is fluid production timing inside the body. The solution begins with structure. The most effective approach is a clear cutoff for fluid intake approximately 2 hours before sleep. If you go to bed at 10 p.m., then around 8 p.m. is the point where meaningful hydration should stop. After that, only minimal sips, if necessary. Nothing automatic, nothing large. But here is where most people make a critical mistake. They focus only on the evening cutoff without adjusting the rest of the day. And that is why results often feel incomplete because hydration is not a single moment, it is a pattern across 24 hours. Between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m., your body is naturally more efficient at processing fluids. Circulation is active, kidney filtration is stronger, and hormonal regulation is more stable. This is the ideal window to consume a larger share of your daily water intake. A clinical study published in Neurology and Neurodynamics found that older adults who shifted about 40% of their daily fluid intake into this afternoon window, while also enforcing a strict evening cutoff, experienced more than a 60% reduction in nighttime urination within 1 month. That level of improvement is not small. It is a complete shift in sleep stability achieved without drugs, without devices, and without medical procedures, just timing. To strengthen this effect further, pairing afternoon hydration with potassium-rich foods like bananas, cucumbers, or yogurt can help regulate how the body distributes fluids at the cellular level. Potassium works closely with sodium and water balance, helping reduce sudden fluid shifts that can later trigger nighttime bladder activity. When these elements are aligned, the system becomes more stable. The body stops sending unnecessary nighttime signals because it is no longer overloaded or imbalanced at the wrong times. And across clinical experience, this is where the real transformation happens. Patients who once assumed frequent nighttime waking was permanent begin noticing a steady reduction. 4 awakenings become 2, 2 become 1, and in many cases, sleep becomes uninterrupted again. Not because anything was forced, but because the body was finally given a rhythm it could follow. At this point, it becomes clear that nighttime waking is not simply an unavoidable consequence of aging. It is often the result of a disrupted daily hydration pattern that can be corrected with structure and awareness. And once that foundation is understood, everything else begins to make sense. But even after all of this, there is still one final layer to consider, the part that ties every principle together into a complete system of hydration behavior that supports sleep instead of disrupting it. That final piece is what makes the difference between partial improvement and long-term stability.